Hi, this is John Hope Bryant, and I'm the founder of Operation Hope, and I'm the co-host along with Ambassador Andrew Young for the 2021 annual meeting for the Hope Global Forum. And I'm so honored to be here with my friend and my fearless leader, because I serve on her board, full disclosure, at Nextdoor, my friend, Miss Sarah Friar. You might know her from glossing the pages of the Wall Street Journal and Fortune magazine and even People magazine. And as she has been saluted and highlighted as one of the most influential women in corporate tech and business in probably the last decade, actually. She was the chief financial officer, I believe it is, at Square. She'll correct me if I'm wrong about that, before becoming CEO. Okay, I can write about that at Nextdoor. She was a banker before that. She hails from a region in the world, hopefully she gets into this, that is not unfamiliar with conflict and challenges, be they religious, be they political, be they societal. So when I say we need social justice through an economic lens, he knows what I'm talking about. When Black people say they don't feel seen, she knows what they're talking about. When Latino or Asians feel put upon or put aside or disrespected, she knows what they're talking about. Clearly, when women feel that they are not accorded the same balanced view or compensation or authority or opportunity, she absolutely knows what they're talking about, but she also knows how to step over mess and not in it. And that hopefully, how you respond to life. One thing I've been very intrigued about, Sarah, is it's not what you throw at her. You can throw a brick wall, it won't really matter. But it is how she responds to it. She doesn't react to it. She responds to it because it's not emotion. And she just sort of flicks it off her shoulder and keeps on moving. And I hope she talks about where she grew up. I hope she talks about what really makes her tick, because we are trying to meet this moment. That's the theme of this year's forum. And we're sitting in this moment in history, and how people are put together and how they come out of this determines whether you're in the surviving mentality, a thriving mentality, or my favorite, the winning and building mentality. And we want to get into also how Nextdoor, we want to challenge Nextdoor to be a force for good at scale as we talk about social justice through an economic lens. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend Sarah Friar.
John, thank you. That is way too nice of an intro, but I appreciate it. And I do think there's a lot in there. We will get to the fact that I grew up in Northern Ireland. I grew up during the Troubles. So that definitely taught me a lot about the power of community, but how we really need to be active participants in our community to meet the moment. I love this phrase of this conference. But you're also right that when tough things come at me, come at Nextdoor, come at people around me, I really do think you have to take a breath, take a moment, and then really think about how are you going to rise to meet that moment, taking in all the context. Because often a response that is heated and in the moment, not maybe well thought through, it can be even more, in the end, disruptive, debilitating, divisive, which are all the things we're trying to fight against. So yes, you're right. I am thoughtful on this. Sometimes I have to be eating my words inside and not letting them pop out, but it does take a moment. It takes people like you.
Well, and I'm not exaggerating what I'm about to say. It's like you, I do believe I am thoughtful and reflective. A decade ago, 15 years ago for sure, you would have intimidated me. You are whip smart, wicked smart. You are an analytical brain walking. You see the issue coming, and you're already putting together the formula around the solution. You get up earlier, you stay up later, you work harder, probably because men have never cut you a break. And you probably work with some of the most challenging men on the planet, and some of the smartest, like Jack Dorsey at Square and Twitter. I put them in the smart category, not the challenging category.
Definitely.
When I joined your board, I've been with a lot of people, so a lot of boards. I got a briefing memo that lasted a week and a half, and it was designed by you. It was unbelievable. The intensity, the denseness of it. You can't fake that kind of smarts. So, does this come from your childhood, where you just knew you had to be twice or 3 or 4 times smarter than the men around you? Where does this girth come from?
It's a great question. I don't know if I've spent that long thinking about it, because in some ways it's who I am. I do think that when you come from a different background. I grew up. I talked about Northern Ireland, but if you really saw where I grew up on the border. I grew up in a farming community, still very small. Vast majority of people still stay there their whole life. My mom and dad didn't go to college. And so when I got to, actually, I didn't, even before I got to college, I took a year out because I had to figure out a way to pay for college. So I had to work that year when most of my friends were heading off to college or maybe to their first job. And then from there, once I arrived into college, it was a really shocking environment for me. Very different from how I grew up. In the UK, I went to Oxford. The issue was class, not race, but they all have the same intended consequences, actually, of making people feel smaller and less because of their background. And sometimes it's very much not on purpose. People of privilege don't even realize it. Today, I think of myself as someone with a lot of privilege. So reminding myself to recognize that is important. But sometimes it's actually very explicit and meant to keep you down. So to your point, I did always feel like I had to be better, right? I was an engineer in college, so I was in a very male-dominated space. I did my first internship on a gold mine in Ghana, of all places. I was the only woman in that mine. Then I went into the finance industry, as you noted, banking, that bastion of female friendliness, I say with some sarcasm. And then I went to tech. And, it's definitely, these are tougher environments for people that don't look like maybe the archetype. And so that gives me a lot of fire in the belly in the end. And so you're right. And today, as I sit as a CEO, for example, I think of my job as number one, people first. So getting my people right. Best people will run through walls for you. So if you just spend your whole time on that as a leader, you are going to rock it because your team is rocking it. Usually I'm just trying to do myself out of a job. The second thing is to be really clear on purpose and core values. Purpose, because that needs to be a North Star in every decision you're making, but also because it's the thing that inspires people, right? People don't get up in the morning and run through walls for you because you've managed to convince their head that you're smart or you've got it figured out. They run through a wall because of this. They run through a wall because of purpose. So that's the second thing that I spend a lot of time on. And then being the pace setter. You kind of mentioned about that I work hard. I do work hard. It's both a blessing and a curse, if you ask my family.
But it's beast mode. It's not hard. It's beast mode. The only person who sends emails earlier than me or later than me or text messages is you. That's the only person I know.
Mine is beast mode, but early in the morning beast mode. I'm actually not that good at about 10 p.m. You tend to lose me. But yeah, I do think that there's no substitute for hard work. You want to work smart too, but I think you need to be the pace setter. And part of pace setting, and then I'll stop, but is about excellence. And it's a word that's really been in my head a lot too, about you need to model excellence. You need to commit to excellence yourself. Then you can expect it of other people. And the best people love that environment. Everybody wants to work in these really high density talent environments where everyone is doing the best work of their life. And that's kind of the third piece of what I think is important. So yeah, where did that come from? I'm super grateful to my mom and dad. They were superb community activists. I didn't really think about did they work hard, but they never really stopped because they lived community. If someone came to our door at 2 a.m. because they were having a heart attack, my mom, who was the nurse, went to get them. Or if they came because, frankly, they had drunk a little too much and they needed to figure out, how to get home and pull themselves together. Often my dad was the person stepping in. But yeah, they had an incredible work ethic. So I was very blessed.
So that's where the kindness came from. That's where the heart comes from. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's no mistake that the ticker symbol for Nextdoor speaks to spirit. So I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about meeting the moment and what did the 400-year-old social justice reckoning of Black America mean to you and your husband? What did the pandemic, the economic crisis, which really hurt those at the bottom end of the spectrum that you and I talked about so much? What does all that mean to you, the state of our democracy right now? Like, is this just like a bad day or whatever? Or do you think this is like a historic moment and a shift? What does this mean to you? And has it impacted how you do business and the decisions you make? And then I want to pivot from that. And I think that tied to the women's group you put together for folks who I think don't have the credibility, the net worth, the voice, the share of voice that you have. Is that somehow connected? But I want to pivot to the big idea, if we run out of time, of Nextdoor and what you're trying to build there, which I think is pretty unique. Take it in any way you want.
Yeah, so thank you, because I think that phrase, meet the moment, is a phrase we used all the time last year. So for those of you who don't know Nextdoor, please go sign up, get on Nextdoor, because it's all about community. We're in 1 in 3 households here in the United States. We're in 11 countries around the world. And as I said, our purpose to cultivate a kinder world where everyone has a neighborhood they can rely on. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Oh, it's free to sign up. I was just saying it's free. Sign up.
It's free. Yeah, good point. Yeah, it's free. It's easy. It's going to actually make you feel better. So in this meet the moment, a year ago or over a year and a half ago now, as COVID started to happen, we could see neighbors doing what neighbors do best, right? In a moment of crisis, they wanted to, first of all, give and get help. And we knew that Nextdoor could be there to help with that. So we saw help groups popping up all over. I don't know about all of you, but I was doing basic things like going to the pharmacy for a couple of my neighbors who are a little bit older and immunocompromised. We could see neighbors turning to Nextdoor for trusted information, right? Where am I going to find the best information right now about keeping me and my family safe? Even right up to today, we have something called a vaccine map where you can go schedule your vaccine. And then, of course, a lot of those online connections ultimately become offline connections. Now, it took a while in COVID to get to offline again, but we see great things happen. In fact, next week, I'm going to be back in DC, and one of the groups I'm going to go hang out with is an amazing men's group or dad's group. They're going to let me in, and it was founded by a great neighbor in Virginia, Abraham. He had a pretty tough upbringing in the South. He's a Black man. He did not want this for his kids, so he moved up just outside DC in Virginia. And he started a dad's group on Nextdoor, and it's just thrived, to your point. And he's definitely in the winning category too. But these are just some of the things that Nextdoor did from a pandemic perspective. Social justice, because I want to take that one on, that was much tougher. And this is not a bad day. This is something that's, ingrained in our history here in the United States. I will fully admit, as someone who always plays the line a little about being an immigrant, but I've lived here for 20 years. So I'm far beyond being new to the country. But, I'll often play the card of like, well, I don't really know US history that well. Or when my kids take, civics classes in school, I'll, so I don't even know what's the House of Representatives, the Senate, tell me more. That was a rude awakening of like, enough, lady, you need to educate yourself and you need to really dig deep because your company needs to lift up and really think about the place we're going to play in this world, where we have unforeseen consequences of bringing neighbors together. There can be bad things that happen. But importantly, what's a role we can play going forward? So we've done things like, for example, we've taken inclusivity and anti-bias training, not just within our company, because that's only 600 people, but out into our communities. And I'm really excited that we're now getting into tens of thousands of people taking part in this training and really just learning a lot about what they may not even recognize in themselves. And then working with a great group out of Stanford to then actually measure and say, does this actually do anything? And so when you survey people, they'll always tell you a little bit what you want to hear. But what we can do with Stanford is really look at the data and say, are people now acting more and more without bias? So that was kind of one piece. And there's so many things I could talk about on the social justice. Like we could now talk for hours. But you went to a third area, because I think there were kind of, it was a trifecta. And the third area is the impact on the financial system, the impact particularly to small businesses. And they are the lifeblood of a community, right? When they thrive, communities thrive, because they tend to not be only about the money, they tend to also be deeply embedded in their community, right? They'll tend to, from $1, give back. And I think that's so important. And I'll maybe end out, you kind of mentioned Ladies Who Launch, which is the nonprofit that I founded with my husband. It is geared towards women on Main Street. So not tech, you're not getting VC funding or whatever. These are just normal women, non-binary, all looking for ways to start, run, and grow their businesses. We do a lot around community. We do a lot around inspiration. We do a lot around education. And then last year we started to do grants, because in the end, show me the money, people, they're just not getting the money to get their businesses growing. And that has been both a necessary component, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon. Personally, it's a fill the tank moment, because every time I talk to one of these women, I am fired up again. I'm going to run through that wall for you.
So we've covered a lot of ground. I think people have got a sense of who you are, and even maybe whose you are. What drives you? What's that passion inside of you? Does all that connect together with this? I know you called me on weekends and at midnight, and you and your husband, I won't tell your business, but gave a lot personally to our work at Operation Hope for no credit, never asked for anything for it, even asked for that to be a challenge for others to do more. You're always trying to do more. What's this drive inside of you, and where's it going? So what's the end game for you, or your true north? And lastly, what's the fuel behind 30% growth at Nextdoor? It's unbelievable. 30% plus annual growth at Nextdoor with you as CEO, company now going public. Are you proving that you can do well and do good at the same time? Are you proving that you can be a capitalist and don't have to be a jerk? I mean, is there a larger message here for corporate America?
I mean, 1,000%. So first of all, our revenue grew 66% year over year. Our WOWs grew in that sort of range that you're talking about, but like the revenue grew 66%. So you can absolutely do well by doing good. It comes back to where I started, this purpose, right? Having a true north for a company is incredibly important, because purpose-driven companies, I think, can hire incredible people, but they're different, because those are people who run through walls, right? In the meet the moment, I remember in the midst of like the crazy part of COVID, right? Those first couple of weeks, we realized that people's need to give and get help was really, really heightened. And so we decided to create a product called Help Map. And I remember talking to the engineer who was really helping build it, right? The senior engineer. And I looked at him and I was like, you look like shit. And he's like, I haven't slept for 72 hours, but this is going to launch. And the minute it launches, I will go to sleep. And I almost get teary when I think of that interaction, because the fact he cared so much. And this is a man with a young kid, right? We're all in the midst of a pandemic. We're all thinking somewhat about ourselves and our families. And yet here he was not sleeping for 3 days to get something out into the world for good. So that's number one, like on the purpose, it's so incredibly important. It's also great for your business model though, because today at Nextdoor, we see things like 70% of the people who come to the platform, like all of you listening right now, come for free. Like we don't have to pay to get you, because you hear about us. Like other people invite you in because they're in that dad's group, or they're like, this is where you should go if you need help from your neighbors. And so purpose is actually good for the business model too. And what I love about purpose-driven companies is you get that flywheel going where you have a really strong business model. It throws off cash flow. Cash flow feeds the investment to go do more and more that claims to your purpose. But more people come, so the business model keeps working. So that circle, I think, is incredibly important. And look, I think you can do it in small scale. I've seen tons of my Ladies Who Launch folks do it in small scale companies. I think you can do it at our scale, which is on its way to being a really big company. I think a lot of people lose their way. And the question you asked me at the beginning was like, what creates the fire in the belly? I don't know. I think you're somewhat born with it. Definitely some of it is wanting to prove, that I can do it, right? I was one of those people that was often told I couldn't. And that is the worst thing you can say to me, because I'm not going to run you over to prove that I can. But it also comes from this really happy place too of, I did come from a family that really cared about their community. They taught me how much kindness matters. And the kind of really interesting secret is when we are kind to others, in that spirit of giving, it actually accrues back to us. It's actually incredibly good for your health. So even if you want to be selfish, being kind is actually an incredible way to live longer, live happier, and I think ultimately create this flywheel that you're talking about. Do well by doing good.
And so I know we got to wrap up here in a few minutes. You got a company to run and a family to feed. But I want you to know you help to feed those who are really hungry for hope during this session. You feed me every time I talk to you because I'm so proud to know you. And I want the audience to know, for people who think, oh, John did this, John did that. No, I have a lot of friends. When you saw Jack Dorsey, founder of Twitter, speaking at Hope Global Forum before the pandemic, 2019, I think that was Sarah Friar saying, Jack, you should know John. You guys would love each other, and you got to go to speak at this forum. Well, Jack was not coming to Atlanta. He was going to New York. And Sarah encouraged him to bypass it and bring himself to Atlanta. And as a result of that, a new friendship was emerged. And I've since met folks at Twitter, Ned and others, who are great people. And Twitter's now involved in our work. And then Twitter then put up $100 million to reinvest in Black banks and put 5 Hope Inside locations in Black banks at no cost to us from the profits of that. So Sarah didn't write a check, but she called somebody else to do more than write a check, but to lean in to our work. Her husband, David Riley, is working with us on a corporate inclusion initiative we'll launch later this year to get Blacks on boards of directors, because that's a deficiency. Sarah has found women that I'm associated with and trying to get her into the Women Who Launch program. I don't know, Sarah, they didn't know I remembered all of this, but it's the little things that create the big things. It's the caring. It's the love.
It's the connection. Yeah, the connections. The flight of a butterfly's wings can create a hurricane, in the Caribbean or whatever. That to me is the power of connections with people too, right? You don't know. You make that little connection. 9 times out of 10, maybe nothing happens, but no harm happened. But once you just get something beautiful that happens, and it's something John is magnificent at. But I think for everyone watching, we can all do it. Let's do it this week. Pick one thing and go see if you can, flap those butterfly wings and create a hurricane.
As my friend Chelsea Clinton would say as we wrap up, I want us all to go get caught trying to do good. Let's get into his to say good trouble. Sarah Friar is living proof. Ladies, come on now. You're seeing living proof that you could up from nothing. You can live your truth. You can have values. You can have principles. You can have a family. You can care deeply about your community. You can run a business, be smart as a whip, get up early, stay up later, run circles around those who underestimate you, and you can win. This is the moment, and we are meeting it. This is my friend and my partner and my leader, Sarah Friar. Hope you enjoyed her as much now as I enjoy her every day. Thank you.
Thanks, John.